Situational irony is when the reader expects one outcome to happen in the story, but instead another different outcome happens. The Interlopers is about two heads of feuding families get stuck under a tree together and resolve the conflict that has lasted for decades. I think you're just missing a who there. So we'll just add that. Who gets stuck under a tree and resolve the conflict that has lasted for decades. You also want to make sure that you give the author to the story. The Interlopers is a good example of situational irony because the reader thinks that the two men's cooperation will lead to survival, but instead the men's cooperation leads to death. Good. Situational irony is used in the Interlopers when the reader thinks the men's newfound friendship will lead to their survival, but their friendliness with each other leads to their death. So you can hear, as I'm reading this out loud, how very repetitious of the previous sentence this one is. Something that I did in the when I wrote the example 3-paragraph essay was I simplified this dramatically. I just said situational irony is used in, you could say, the end of the Interlopers, period, and have that be the entire sentence. And that helps, the shortness of it helps to differentiate it from the thesis statement, and also the fact of the new information of roughly where the irony takes place is another way to differentiate it from the thesis statement. This is shown when the text says, "Who are they?" asked George, quickly straining his eyes to see what the other would gladly not have seen. "Wolves." This means that the reader was expecting that the cooperation of the newly formed friends. This means that the reader was expecting that the cooperation of the newly formed friends to survive and resolve the conflict by uniting as one. So there is something a little wonky going on there in the grammar of that sentence. I think what you want is like the reader was expecting that the cooperation of the newly formed friends would help them to survive and resolve the conflict by uniting as one, right? But instead their cooperation got them ripped apart by bloodthirsty wolves. Good. The one thing you're missing here is instead of this long explanation, which I already talked to you about, before you give the quote, you want to briefly summarize the scene just before the quote occurs. So you're going to want to say something to the effect of, when they're trapped underneath the tree, after having resolved their differences, they decide to call for help together. And then you can say, the text says, or something to that effect. But you do need to contextualize it just a little bit, add a little bit of context to help us, as the reader of this essay, understand roughly what we're talking about here. The Interlopers is a great example of situational irony because we were expecting that because of the two men's cooperation they will survive, but instead their cooperation led to their demise. By reading this short story, yeah, you want LED actually, kind of like Led Zeppelin. By reading this short story, the reader will remember not to let petty disputes blind you from the actual danger. Good. You should resolve conflicts before the conflicts put you in actual danger. Yes. Just this actual danger, this repetitiousness here, maybe you could find a different way to say that. Overall, Quinn, this is really good, man. Just make the small changes that I mentioned. Proofread again, make sure everything flows nicely. Make sure that you're avoiding little spelling, grammar mistakes, etc. If you have any questions about my comments, please let me know, and please make sure you resolve all of your comments, not just the ones that I wrote down. There are many that I only said but didn't write down. So please, if you need to rewatch this video once or twice more just to make sure you get everything, I highly recommend that. Alright, thanks so much for your effort on this, man. I really look forward to reading the final copy.